Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't had a chance, head down into the show notes and check out our YouTube channel and the links to leave us reviews and how to support the podcast. Today we are doing a little bit of a homeschool journeys educational tour de force. We are going to be talking extensively about traveling to Disney. I know a lot of families are planning trips and they're looking to go out into the world, and Disney is always one of those places where we all, our children want to stop. Disney cinema is such a big piece of our lives. A lot of our girls love to dress up as the princesses. I mean, I know that's true with our kids. And so today we brought on Bailey Gurr, a member of in the Facebook group, and she's looking to possibly homeschool in the near future, but she had all this great insight on traveling to Disney, and she travels every year with her family, and she was able to help us through some of the technical aspects of actually going to Disney World and all the nuance and some of the pro tips of somebody who goes every single year. But also she was trying to share a little bit of knowledge with us about, homeschooling while at Disney and all the various, educational aspects that are kind of just embedded right into the park and things that you can, we just take for granted when we walk into the park and we see these, hey, we see an aquaponics thing over here, or, a futuristic, impression of what the future is going to look like in the 2020s from, the 1950s point of view. And we can talk a lot about history and understanding and whatnot through the park and all these great activities that were available to, us as families and children.
Yeah, we're planning our own trip to Disney sometime next year. And so we were really excited to talk with her. I think one of the things that really stood out for me was just how much we can do to prepare our kids for Disney and the things that we can look at before we go, whether it's reading back about old fairy tales or learning more about, as you said, something like aquaponics, or there's some really neat things at Epcot. This would dovetail wonderfully if you're doing an around the world study, going to the different countries of Epcot. Like there's a lot of things we can prep our kids for. And then when they're there, I think that it's all about making those connections. And that's something we can even take away with us back into our homeschool. Hey, remember when we were there? Remember the things we saw? She just had so many educational ideas that I just didn't think of, that I really appreciated her insight. I certainly appreciated her insight on the planning side, since that's my job in our family. But I really appreciated too all of the ways that we can educate while we're having a great time at the parks.
So without any further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right into the interview with Bailey Gurr.
Well, hi, Bailey. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, we're super duper excited. Selfishly, we're getting ready to plan a trip ourselves to Orlando in the near future. And when you popped up on our Facebook group and said, hey, ask me anything about educating at Disney, I was like, oh, I can't even, this is not a single question.
That's some serious bait.
There was some, and a whole bunch of folks were like, yes. And I thought, oh, this poor woman's going to be PMing everybody. So let's just bring her on the show and let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
So can you give us some background on your family and, why you're looking to homeschool in the future?
Yeah. So, my name's Bailey, as I stated there. And I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4 kiddos. So I've got a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a almost 2-year-old. He'll be 2 on Monday, actually. So, and I've been a stay-at-home mom since I had my first, so from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So it's been great. And my husband is a home builder, and he specializes in log homes. And
you out there listening can't see the beautiful log paneling behind her.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's us. And we're from Canada. So our house, we live rurally, so we're pretty much in the woods. And so we do a lot of outside time and playing outside. So far, we've been doing a lot of frog catching and that kind of thing. That's our thing. Like this summer has been all about frogs. So um, yeah, but that's kind of us. And then in terms of homeschooling, I've been thinking about it, and my husband and I have been talking about it for, it's been probably a little over a year now. And I see it happening in the future. It's just right now, it's not quite the right time yet. So I'm hoping that we could maybe start not this coming school year, but like I guess it would be 24-25 that school year. But who knows what will happen? Maybe it'll happen sooner. I don't know. But and then in terms of like the why, it's a loaded question because there's so many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons, which sometimes I think isn't valid enough, is that I just really want to, like, selfishly for myself, like, I really just enjoy seeing my kids like learning and experiencing all the things. So, selfishly, I'm kind of like, oh, like, I just really want to do these things with them and see them learning and exploring. And I really love their curiosity. And, I just think it could be really amazing. And anyways, and yeah, I don't know. Our public school is great. I'm emotionally attached to it, so it's really hard to like pull away. My husband and I both went to that public school, and we met in kindergarten, so it's pulling at my heartstrings, even though I I don't really like want it in the long run for them to be there, but yeah, so that's like a big reason. It's like I feel the pull just to do it. But public school right at the moment seems to be working for my kids, so we're just gonna kind of go with it for now. But yeah, I could go into a lot more reasons, but we'll leave it at that for now.
I think that's a totally valid reason. We love those aha moments. That's just, and that's
Yeah.
those moments of like homeschooling joy when you've had like a really rough day and then you see the aha, you're like, okay, this was worth it. This was worth it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you all love to travel to Disney and you go pretty often, right?
Yep. We go when did we start going every year? I think, well, my son is 6 and we're planning his 6th trip. So we go like every year, I guess.
So, and you, I think a lot of families go to Disney and it's kind of this like crazy, chaotic week where there's too much sugar and too many rides and kids without naps. And then they all come home and they need a vacation from their vacation. But you're using it to kind of pull in some educational aspects. So like, tell us about Disney. Like, how do you plan for this kind of a trip? Because I'm telling you what, my planning right now is like over my head, and I'm a planner.
Yeah.
So, how do you go about prepping for this?
It's a bit of a process. We have it down pat now because we have a lot of experience with it. It definitely was a learning curve when we first went, but when we went, we had an infant and just one. So we weren't really looking for the educational aspects of it.
But you've done it a number of times.
Yeah.
You're getting really good at the planning thing. Like how because we tend to like put stuff together and packing lists and whatnot whenever we go on a trip. What does that look like for 4 children?
Oh goodness. Yeah. So
All the car seats.
So,
I can't just
the
imagine
packing.
the car
Oh
seats.
yeah, the car seats. And we drive. So we're coming from Ontario. So it's a 24-hour drive for us. And we've done the drive, I guess, twice, and then before then we flew. But now we drive. So yeah, so we've got 4 car seats in our van, and yeah. But some of the past episodes I've listened to with you guys, you were talking about your Ireland trip, and I remember listening to the episode where you guys focused on like packing and planning, and I was organizing Lego as I was listening to it, and I was like, yes, I was like nodding, and I was like, yes, I do all those things, like all those tips that you guys had. we totally use those. So for 4 kids, I'm a big fan of the packing cubes.
Okay.
That Ariel has used. So each kid has a different colored packing cube, and we do it that way, and we also keep it really minimal. So I remember we used to bring so much, but you can only bring so much on the plane. And then when we first drove, we were able to bring a little bit more. But this past trip, when we packed our van, I remember looking at my husband being like, are we missing a bag or two? Like we seem to have extra room, which was interesting. But I think that we've got it so down pat now that we don't really need a lot of the extras. Like we just bring essentials. We plan to do laundry when we're there, because we're there for we usually go for about 2 weeks, or maybe like 10 days. So with 4 kids, that's a lot of stuff if you don't plan to do laundry. So we pack just enough to get us through until we can do some laundry, and then we don't have to bring so much with us. But yeah, so that's one way that we do that, was with the packing cubes with clothes anyway. And then you don't really need to bring much to Disney to entertain. I have to say, like, there's so much to look at and to talk about. Even in the lines, you don't really need to come prepared with too much to keep everybody occupied. So I find there's enough to look at and to do that we don't really bring much to the parks at all. Maybe, I mean, a bubble wand is always fun. So
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with that.
And cheaper than buying it at Disney.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely bring that with you. Yep.
So that's, you're talking about like you're optimizing the packing of the clothes and the toys and the seats and all the things that the kids need, and obviously the stuff that you guys need. Do you bring a lot of strollers? How do you, manage, some younger children who might, kind of fall asleep or get tired?
Yeah, so we rent strollers.
Okay.
So we started renting when we flew, because we didn't want to deal with taking a stroller on the plane and trying to figure that out. So we rented, and actually I've rented from several places in Orlando, and they all have the same strollers to rent, and I've had a great experience with them all. So all the companies that I've used anyway. Yeah, so I think they're all like pretty much the same. You just have to check if you're on Disney property. There's only I think there's only one company that delivers to the resort. So if you want that kind of convenience, if you're on property, like, you'd want to look into that company. But yeah, so we rent strollers. We rented for the last 2 times, I guess. We've done 2 double strollers. They're like the City Select, like double strollers, so side by side strollers. We're quite the crew when we go through. It's like we're pretty loaded up there. But yeah, so we do 2 double strollers, and it's really easy. We actually, like, at first we were kind of dreading having 2 double strollers, but it's fantastic because the kids, when they get tired, they have a place to rest or to nap. Those strollers are great for napping in. And then also it holds all your stuff. So you don't have to like cart around too much. Like, you just, and then you park your stroller and then you go. So you're not actually like bringing it and like working it around things. Like, it's pretty convenient. So yeah, we love the double strollers.
Do you take a lot into the park, or are you packing food and all that stuff into the park with you?
Yes, we don't bring too much, but we do have snacks on hand. Especially with so many littles, it's like you need snacks. Snacks are like survival. But we bring like a little cooler bag, and we pack anything that we need there for, like easy things like cheese strings and like the applesauce pouches, or like yogurt tubes, like things like that, fruit. And we try to do a grocery run before we get into our trip, so that we have some of those essentials in our room. And then that's how we kind of pack for the day. Then we also make sure everybody has a change of clothes. Not so much, not the adults, but the little ones. They all have a change of clothes because people get messy and accidents happen and everything like that. So all the kids have a change of clothes, and Depending on the weather, we tend to go in February,
Okay.
just because that works for our family. We also pay attention to the crowds, and February seems like a really nice time. And temperature wise, it's not too hot, it's not too cold. So we also, we usually in February we'll need like a light sweater in the morning, and then we're good to go for the rest of the day. So we'll have a light sweater for everybody, and then I don't even know what else we pack. Water, snacks, and that's basically it. We have our magic bands, and then we're good to go.
So do you guys tend to stay on property in one of the resorts, or do you rent condos or an Airbnb outside and then commute in?
So we are Disney Vacation Club members. So it's kind of like a timeshare in a way. We've chosen as a family to invest in Disney because we see such value in it and value in like staying on the resorts. So this helps us afford to do that. so so we stay on property, and we stay in some of the resorts, the Disney resorts, which I am biased to. I love them, and I think that it just makes the whole experience more magical. So
What do you get with staying on the property? Do they have like meet and greets or, themed meals or something like what's the fun aspect around that?
so there's no meet and greets, but each resort has such an interesting theme with it,
Mhm.
and each resort has its own history too to it, which is kind of cool. Um, and then there's so much to do at those resorts. Like some of them, it's the dining. There are some resorts that have really fantastic restaurants. Like my husband and I are, I wouldn't really call us foodies, but we really enjoy trying different restaurants at Disney. So we like to test out some of the restaurants, and some of our favorites are on the resorts. So they have those kinds of things to offer, and just really neat experiences. Like I'm thinking of our last trip, we stayed at the Polynesian resort, and it was just such a cool theme for our kids to see, and it literally felt like we were somewhere else, like we were Hawaii. Like it was so cool. So yeah.
So when you're on property, how many days are you going to the park? And, maybe for people who haven't gone, who are listening, do you pay for every single day? I know we're looking at like the various days and how much we're spending on those and which parks we're going to look at to going and stuff. Do you get something extra for being on property, or how many days do you end up going into the park?
So when we stay on property, especially for our family, we love the pool.
Mhm.
So we do tend to take a couple days in there as like rest days, and we
Mhm.
just spend the day at the resort and the pool, and we really take the time to enjoy some of the activities. Actually, that's something. It's a goal of mine to do more of. They have like Disney movie nights out in like by the pool area, and they have some like really cool activities for all the kids. And we never get a chance to do those things because we always end up being so busy and like on the go. But I really want to try to slow down this next trip, and try to enjoy some of those things that they have to offer at the resort more, because it's there for us, and we really should. But um I will say, so in terms of planning like our trip in advance, my husband and my mother-in-law team up together to do that, because my in-laws come with us every
Okay.
trip. So the two of them together are the like planners in terms of like reservations and that kind of thing. My mother-in-law especially, she loves the parks. Like she loves doing all the things at the parks, whereas like my husband is more so like wanting to stay and do stuff in the resort. So what usually ends up happening is that we do end up staying, or we do get up our park days, and we do the morning at the park, and then the afternoon in the pool and spending the time at the resort. Because what usually happens is it gets really hot in the afternoon and the crowds get a little bit busier. So that's when we kind of like, we're just like, okay, let's go back to the resort and do that. Now, if you're an annual pass holder, that would work really well, because then you don't have to worry about spending money on a park day that you're not getting like the full day.
Mhm.
So you could definitely think about that if you are an annual pass holder. And if you're not, then I would suggest, especially if you're not on the resort, I would say definitely take the full day at the park, and try to make the most of that day.
Yeah, because it can be a little pricey, and I know Ariel's coming back in because our 4-year-old is bothering us at the door. The only people who can get the annual passes are locals in Florida, right?
Well, no, I mean, if you want to give up your firstborn child, you can get an annual pass if you don't live in Florida.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
I think
yes.
it's like $1,600
Per
per
person.
person, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's something astronomical that we would not pay. But
Okay, one kidney
Yeah.
coming up. I
so
got
how
it for
do you
you.
decide, like, are you looking at the educational part of it to decide which, like, how many days you're going to go to each thing? Or is it like, okay, we need like 2 days at Magic Kingdom because that always needs 2, and Animal Kingdom only needs 1 day? Or like, how do you decide how much time to spend where?
And do you go to the
Yeah.
other parks as well, or is it just Disney World?
Well, right now it's just Disney World
Mhm.
that we've been going to. My husband and I have been to Universal. We are starting to get to the point where we want to explore more of Orlando and even more of Florida. So as Disney Vacation Club members, there's another resort in Vero Beach
Yep.
that
My mom worked there when she got her
oh yeah.
culinary. Yeah, she got her culinary degree, and she
It's
ended
really
up
pretty.
being a cook there on the beach. It's a beautiful
Oh,
little
that's so
resort.
cool.
It's right on the water. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, so we really want to go there and experience just some of the fun things that you can do around that area too.
Mhm.
So we're starting to get to the point now where we want to like see what else is out there, because we've been so Disney focused. So now we want to kind of like spread our wings and go, and we do want to do Universal Studios with the kids, but I feel like Universal, they should be maybe a little bit older. I find the rides are a lot more intense there.
They are. They are.
And we're not at the Harry Potter stage yet. So until it will be like, a really good, experience for them, then we're gonna wait on that. Don't want to ruin it for them.
Well, yeah, and I think when we go, Ariel's going to take our oldest to the Harry Potter experience. So I'll have to take the little one, and you guys get to go do that
Somewhere else. Yeah.
somewhere else.
But it's
Yeah,
hard to
yeah,
say,
yeah.
like, there's so much to do at the parks. And I think it's overwhelming when people sit down to
Mhm.
plan and say, like,
Mhm.
well, can I do all of Magic Kingdom in 1 day? Is that realistic with little kids? Do I take every park I take 2 days for? What's your experience as far as like how much there is to do at the different places and how much time you should spend?
That's hard. I would say you have to look at your family and do research before you go on all the different attractions that are there. But you cannot do it all in 1 day. I would say each park, except for maybe Animal Kingdom, each park, if you want to do everything, would take 2 days each, is what I'm kind of thinking. Um, yeah, but if you're looking at your family and your family's interests, and you're thinking, this isn't something that we're really interested in, or that kind of my kids aren't ready for, or maybe are too old for, then you can kind of scratch some things off the list to be like, okay, like we don't necessarily need to do this. So you could really pick like some of your top things that you really want to experience with your family, and then go from there, and decide from that. Like if you find like for you guys, I know you guys are Star Wars fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are,
um
yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Guilty
So
is charged.
yeah. So you guys might like to spend a little bit more time at Hollywood Studios, right? So and if your kids are also, I think you mentioned your kids like it as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
if everyone is kind of on board there, then you know that you want to kind of allow for more time. And if you're looking at the crowd calendar and paying attention to that, then you can kind of see it's a pretty busy park now. Like I find the last couple times we've been there, it's been the busiest and the most people and the really long wait lines. So you'd want to spend, a little bit more time there if you want to get that full experience. So
you said the wait lines, waiting in line
yeah,
for the
yeah,
rides with children. You have 4,
yeah,
we have
yeah.
2. You have twice the amount of, anxiety and lack of
Yeah.
patience.
Hmm.
How do you handle it? How do you strategically plan? What features are available in the park? Fast passes and all this stuff. How do you manage not waiting 2.5 hours to go on the teacups?
Yeah, no, we're actually like, I don't know what, again, it's like my husband and my mother-in-law are wizards. We don't wait for too long for anything. Um, and again, I think it's the picking and choosing. Like if it's, I think that has a lot to do with it. It's like, we're not going to wait in line, for something that we're not prepared for with it's called lightning lane now.
Okay.
So it's either, lightning lane, and then you can also purchase Genie Plus for the day. And so those are 2 things that you want to familiarize yourself with. And the My Disney Experience app is really important for booking all those things. So you can get some of the heavy hitters with Lightning Lane, and then like some of the things that will take like forever. And it's usually the newer rides that have those available for them. And then it's like a fast pass where you can, skip some of the lines. But I have to say, Disney does a really good job at keeping you occupied in line. I find their queues are really interesting, or they can be anyway. And yeah, so it's good. Now it can get a little tricky with the little ones. So you could bring stuff with you to keep them entertained in line. We never really have had to do that too much, but you definitely could. Like you could bring either a tablet with you or even like a scavenger hunt kind of thing through the queue. That would be kind of cool to look like a little like printed out scavenger hunt. You could do that ahead of time and have that ready to go. That would be kind of fun.
That's a really good idea. I like that.
Yeah, it's a really good idea.
Yeah, yeah, because they have and depending on the ride, like there's so many neat things to look for. So you could and I'm sure there's so much out there on things at Disney. So you could probably find things on Pinterest that people have already like kind of pieced together for you to look for within the queues. But yeah, you could be like, I'm just thinking of the aerial ride, like find 5 seashells, because there's little things within the concrete even that you can like look for. So yeah, you could even print that out and do that and keep them kind of looking around and talking about things in the line. So that would be really
good
cool.
idea. And I always like a good printable.
Yes.
So we're talking about printables and stuff. Let's dive into education at Disney. So how do you approach this? Are you looking for it? Are you trying to build in a certain amount each day, or how are you approaching the whole aspect of finding educational opportunities there?
I would say like the educational opportunities just kind of found us. Like, and I don't know if this is a homeschooler just like perspective on life, is that like you just find the learning by living, like you're just like living your life and you're learning as you go along. So and I don't know if it's just from having that perspective and like living that way that we just notice everything that we're doing every day when we're there. So that's how we kind of like go about it, and kind of started noticing like, wow, like you can really learn a lot. And even ourselves, like I've learned so much from going, it's just, there's so many educational opportunities. But like I even just think of going, like for us, we're kind of like, I would call us like country bumpkins. We live rurally, and like if we didn't go to Disney, our kids would not be exposed to something even as simple as like city transit, right? So when we're at Disney, they're being exposed to all kinds of transportation. We've got the Disney bus transportation, which we take, especially being on property. Then there's the monorail, which my son was obsessed with for a couple years. He could tell you a little bit of info about how it runs and the different colors behind each monorail that goes around. And there's so many boats that you can take. There's steamboats, then there's steam trains that go around the parks, and like that even has its own history with Walt Disney, and each train has its own history. And there are different steam trains that run the tracks at Disney as well. So it's just, even just like touching the surface of like being at Disney, you're just exposed to so much. Even just how to handle a crowd. I know a few family members who have a bit of crowd anxiety, and if they're anywhere that's a bit too busy, it can be very overwhelming. So getting exposure to that is actually really great. Like I find that we can all handle a crowd really well now. And because we've had that exposure when we go. So that's nice. Also, everyone, as you guys probably know, is just super kind there. Like all the staff members, like I have not had a bad experience with the staff. And it's just a really good example of like how to be kind to others and how to reciprocate that kindness. I remember my daughter.
Your comment about about being in the crowds is very true. Like when we were in Dublin, and I know our oldest has never really been in a big city. I think even going into Seattle is not a normal thing for us. And through the pandemic, we didn't go in there. And so she hasn't been downtown in years, and she can't really remember it. So it's really just kind of our rural little town out here in the foothills. And when we were in Dublin, she was like very wide eyed. She was like, there's a lot of people, a lot of buses. It's very noisy and loud. So I can imagine it being, being out in the country and everything like you guys are, being inside like a packed, essentially amusement park city, could be a little bit overwhelming. That could be, something that you have to handle.
Yeah. And I would say now it's like, it's really, everyone's kind of adapted to that, and we handle it pretty well now. And it's funny, my daughter, my 3-year-old now, for her first trip to Disney, it was like the first time I realized how much of a people person she was, because she was a COVID baby.
Right.
And it was like, she hadn't really been exposed to many people. And I was like, oh my goodness, like she's going to be a little overwhelmed, I think. I was like, oh, she's an extrovert actually, because she was just like, everyone would say hi. And, if she had a princess dress on, hi princess. And she was like, hi, like totally out of her shell. And I was like, whoa, this is a different girl. So, so it's just that exposure is just like great in and of itself. Right. So, and also just like waiting in line, like, knowing patience and, all that stuff. It's like, it's all just, really good. So
did you dress up all your kids? Because when we went for 2 days, and she went as Belle and then Snow White. And they would always, you're right, they would always come up to you and go, hello, Princess Belle, Princess Snow White, how are you? And she was like, oh my God, they think I'm a princess. Yeah. do you do that as a matter of for all your kids, or just like if they want to?
Yeah, if they want to. I think I'm gonna have to put a stop to this, but what I had been doing is getting outfits, and I like have it like themed or matching the parks that they're in. So if we're at Animal Kingdom, they'll have like, kind of the Animal Kingdom getup, and then
like safari stuff.
Yeah, like safari stuff, like khaki shorts. And the one year my son had binoculars. It was the cutest thing actually for the Kilimanjaro safari. He had like these little binoculars that he would like wear around, and he was just like this little safari dude. It was so cute. But when we go to like Hollywood Studios, they'll either wear something Toy Story or Star Wars, or at Magic Kingdom, it's all about Mickey or princesses. So it's like I kind of theme it, and then Epcot is like Elsa or Olaf, or our Canadian shirts. We'll wear our Canadian shirts because the World Showcase. So So but I think I have to put a stop to that because they're growing too fast and I can't keep up with it. So it's just silly.
So you talked about the World Showcase. I think that's when I think
Yeah.
of doing education at Disney. I think that's the one I really think about. But hit us with all the ideas. What are your favorite education opportunities?
Sure. So, because you said the World Showcase, we'll start with Epcot. Um, and we can start at the World Showcase if you want. So there's 11 countries that you can tour around, and it's like little pavilions basically. And it's basically you just like walk around in like a semicircle. It's a big semicircle. And at each country, you can taste food from that country, or they have um, facts about the country. The cast members that work there are usually from that country. So you can, if you're learning a foreign language, you can try to practice. Like everyone's really kind there, so they're not gonna. It might be nerve wracking to try to speak, but another language, but you could definitely try. Like in France, we'll be learning French soon, and my kids could always have a chance to practice there and check some things out. There's some history, like facts there as well, and then there's also, we haven't done this yet, but I want to do this. There's a passport kit that you can buy at some of the stores there. And I think it's around like $14 or something. And you can go around to each country, and there's little like stamps that you can put in your passport book as you pass through those countries. And then there are like kid cot stations is what they're called. And there's a cast member there that you can talk to, and little like, stations about the country where you can have a little like takeaway from it, like a little sheet of, I don't know if it's a coloring or something. So that's really fun. But if anyone was doing the build your library around the world, then that could be a really good way to pair, that would be a really good pairing with it. So that's one huge chunk of education right there. But then you have other areas of Epcot, which is fantastic as well. So there's the Seas, which is where you're going to find the Nemo ride. You're going to find Turtle Talk with Crush, which is there's some really great sea turtle facts that you learn, and it's a really fun interactive like show, and it's really cute. My kids love it. And it's a great way to learn about sea turtles. And then when you come out of there, you're in the aquarium, so you're there, and there are cast members there that are super knowledgeable, and you can talk to them about the all of the sea life that's in the aquarium. So that is really fun, and my kids find that super fascinating. There are also manatees there as well, and that's a really good opportunity to talk about some of the dangers that manatees face, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. So so that's really fun too. And like, manatees are something we are not exposed to, so really interesting for our kiddos. And then so that's the seas. And then if you move over to the land, you have Soarin' around the world, which is great for geography. You can talk about, or even try to guess the different countries that you're soaring over in the ride. So that one's great. One of our favorites, and it's sometimes overlooked, it's called Living with the Land. It's like this little boat ride that you take, and you learn about the history of farming, and you get a look at the greenhouses. Well, not the greenhouse, but like one area of greenhouse. And I don't know what it is. We all find it so cool. We get to see how certain things are grown that we didn't know about. Like there are really cool plants that as you pass through on this boat ride, you can see them. And then there's also like the way that they grow it is really innovative as well. So I know I always come out of there like super inspired. I'm like, I'm going to go home and work on my garden. Like, I need to grow some more things. And but it's really cool, and like we always have a great takeaway from that, which is really good. I also learned about aquaponics there. I think that's what it is. And so that's really cool for the kids to think about as well. So that's really great. And then there's a film that they show, and I have it written down here. Oh, the Awesome Planet film, which is it's in that area, the land, and it talks about the Earth's biome and climate change. So that as well is like super impactful for the our young kids, right? So
Hmm.
that's always really great in the land. And again, you come out of there being like, oh, I got to change the world. You're like, oh, we got a lot of work to do. um, and then another really great one is Spaceship Earth. In the ball, in the big Epcot ball, and that one is great for history. You're talking about the development of humans through and technology. So that's really awesome. And then we've got Mission Space, which if you have any space lovers, that's a great way to get a little bit of a taste of what it feels like to be an astronaut, which is kind of cool. No one in our group really enjoys that ride, unfortunately, because they all feel sick on it, except I love it. I do not feel sick on it, but we usually skip that one, unfortunately, because everyone feels pretty sick. And then there's Test Track, of course, which is my husband and my son's absolute favorite. I think we've done that 1,000 times. It's where you can go in and design. You can like design your own vehicle, and you're testing it against four. I think there's four topics. It's power, capability, efficiency, and responsiveness. So you get a little bit of designing. You get to work with technology to design that car. My son finds that so interesting, and it's like every time that we do it, because we've done it multiple times, you can play with what you are adjusting in your design to make it do better in the power category. And you're racing against other people's vehicles. So it's like you want to win in each category to like win overall. So it's really cool to just play with those adjustments on the screen and have him doing that. So that's a really cool way to play with technology and design. So that's great. So we've got so we've got those. I think that's all I have for Epcot.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear about Hollywood Studios, because I am a Star Wars person. So what's the education opportunities at Hollywood Studios?
Hollywood Studios, as is in the name, you're going to see a lot of like Hollywood things, right? So you have a lot of behind the scenes look at things. You have a lot of performances, which is great for any kiddos that are interested in performing or who have some experience with performing, either in plays or whatnot. So we have performances. There's a Frozen sing along, and then there's the Beauty and the Beast, and then there's Phantasmic, which are great shows if anyone is interested in that. Indiana Jones is a really great one to get like a look at like movie magic. So if there's any kids that are kind of getting interested in like the backstage of production, like that's a really cool thing to look into as well and to watch that. It's also a really like one that my son really loves. And then there's the Disney history with Walt. What is it called? It's Walt Disney Presents. So it's like a little mini Disney museum, and it's really neat as well. And you get to go through. I remember I was really impacted when my husband and I first went through it, and you get to see kind of the development of Walt Disney World and some of the first like models of it. So that's a really good way to bring in some history. And then at Galaxy's Edge, so we've got Rise of the Resistance, which is a really exciting ride. Have you guys gone on that yet? No.
Nope.
Okay. So it's pretty cool.
I've seen it. I've seen clips of it online.
I'm scared I'll get sick. I have bad motion sickness.
Maybe
it's just for you.
I know where I'll be.
Yeah, right.
It'll be fine. Think of the education when you're on it. So
okay, yeah.
Children are learning.
But that ride is so technologically advanced with coding. Like so my husband could tell you about this. And anyways, he's got some really cool facts about it, but it is so complicated and complex that it's a very interesting ride to try to pay attention to like the technology that's going into this ride. It's that cool.
Is that something that you would share with your kids beforehand? Like, hey, kids, this is going to use 4D or whatever. And, this is what you'd pay attention to. Like, how do you prep them for these different educational opportunities? Or do you just kind of in the moment be like, look, kids, this thing is happening over here? Or,
I would probably prep them. And if they had an interest, I think that's where I would be. Like, if they are into like, I don't even know. I'm not techie at all. So it's like, I don't know the terminology, but if they were like into like robotics, say, or something like that, then I would probably make a point to like talk to them about it beforehand, to be like, hey, like pay attention to this when we go in through, like, it's going to be really cool. Like I'd kind of like prep them about it beforehand so that they can be watching for that. Otherwise, I feel like you're just going to be experiencing it to experience it, which is great, which you should also do. But, but if they have an interest, I would say like, that's what I usually do. My son, when we went on Everest and Animal Kingdom, but I'll talk to that at another time. But it's like, you kind of prep them for things ahead of time. I would say that's how I kind of go about it. But
do you bring any worksheets or activities or anything for them to do that is part of that preparation, or is it really just you're just talking about it? It's more conversational, experiential type of learning.
We just talk about it right now because my learners are so small right now. Like they're still really little. We haven't really gotten into that, but I can definitely see doing that in the future. I think it could be really beneficial and helpful. So like, I think that we
maybe like
probably
part of the planning or something.
Yeah, right.
Like getting them excited about it. Like, hey, we're going to learn about this thing, and here's some worksheets, or here's a project you can do, and then we're going to go to Animal Kingdom and go on Everest. And
so I think that could be something that is great in the future, definitely. When my kids are a little bit older. Right now, they're just so little. So we just do a lot of talking about what's happening and pointing things out as we go, and just letting them experience it in their own way too. And like, we know that they're seeing some really cool things that will hopefully stick to them. One thing that you guys should do, if you can, is the droid depot. So building your own droid. My son, as a Christmas gift, got that last year. And he had such a good time. My husband and he went together, and I thought that he might be too young for it. And I thought maybe it wasn't the right time for that kind of experience, but he did really well with it. And it was just a really neat building experience. And the things that go into the droid itself is really interesting to know about. Like, he knows how to take it apart now and put it back together and kind of like play around with it. And it's held up since our last trip. So that's good.
So he's kind of learning you're learning a little bit of engineering, and it sounds like a lot of this is great exposure and maybe jumping off points. So if you talk about it beforehand, you go and have the experience, and then you come home and say, hey, remember when we were doing that thing? Let's learn some more about aquaponics now that we're home. Are you seeing some of that carryover where your kids come home and you go like, hey, let's learn some more about this?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And we even do like prep before we go. So our next trip is going to be more focused on Animal Kingdom, I think. So we have already started watching on Disney Plus, the magic of Behind Animal Kingdom, I think is what it's called. So we've already started watching that, and my kids are already like, hey, we saw that gorilla, like we know that baby gorilla, and they're already saying like we've been there. And so they're learning more about the care of the animals before we go and see them again, right? So it's like this whole other layer to their learning and what they're retaining. So we do a little bit of prep before we go, and I'm hoping to do more of that as we move into homeschooling in the future.
So Animal Kingdom is a good way to start. So there's obviously all about the animals, the care for the animals, what kind of environment they need to live in. I can see so many educational opportunities. Are there other things though that at Animal Kingdom as well that you would think of?
Yeah. So just in the parks in general, but definitely because there's a big roller coaster at Animal Kingdom. You could even talk about with older kids the physics of roller coasters, right? And you could get into like a whole science lesson of physics. And actually, Everest, Expedition Everest would be a good one to do too, because they go backwards in it, which is really interesting to think about and scary a little bit. But, but there's lots. So something that we're going to do this next time it's called Wilderness Explorers. And so it's a free little like program, and you get to go around to stations throughout the park and collect badges. So it's kind of like in Up, Russell is a wilderness explorer and he gets his badges. So it's kind of the same idea. And at each station where you get your badge, you get to do an activity and then learn something new at that station. So we plan on doing that this time around. So I think that's a really cool educational program that's already in place for you. You just have to seek it out. So yeah, we're going to try to do that. I really love also, this is kind of overlooked sometimes too, I find, is Rafiki's Planet Watch, which you have to take a little train to like a separate area, and you get to take this little like trail, and there's like little signs or little like plaques that you read about, like facts about bugs and their importance to your environment, and like what you can do at home to encourage pollinators and things like that. And then you get to the conservation station where you get to learn more about what they're doing there. And they have like their veterinarian clinic that you get to kind of like peek into. And then you get to see some like scientists like behind a glass working on, I don't know what they'd be working on, but you can talk about that and bring that in. So if that's where your learners are at, like right now, that's where we're at. Like our kids love like learning about like the natural world around them right now. And it seems to be all about like bugs and reptiles and animals and stuff right now. So that's kind of where we're at. And I think that they will absolutely like just love that and be asking so many questions and whatnot. We can also work on our reading skills on the plaques. So that'll be fun to do. But yeah, so that's a really great station to go to as well, that sometimes I find gets overlooked. But something fun that I was talking to my husband about when we were going over like, you know, some of the education at Disney is Expedition Everest, for its queue, like its lineup. It has like probably the coolest line for us anyway. There's so much to look at and to read in that line. And I was thinking like when our kids get a little bit older, we could go into the whole like legend of the Yeti and its connection to Asia and Mount Everest, and just kind of like do a deep dive into like the Yeti and Mount Everest and like anything to do with that and some of the legends there. So that would be a really cool, like almost like mini unit that you could do. But yeah. And then of course, Animal Kingdom is divided into continents, except for Pandora. It's kind of a made up continent, but it's there. Yeah. It's otherworldly. That's right. But so you could talk about Africa and then Asia, of course. So yeah. And then, they have Dino Land as well. So there's the ride dinosaur there. So for the dinosaur lovers, there's some really fun activities to do there. I'm not sure, they did have where you could like dig for dinosaur bones. I'm not sure if that's still there. I have a feeling it's been changed since COVID, but you'd have to do some research on that and see. But yeah, so that's there. And of course, there's some really great performances too, like the Lion King for anyone who does gymnastics. It's really inspiring, I feel, for anyone who has like a bit of that background to see the Lion King show. Or the Festival of the Lion King, as it's called. So yeah. And we love the trails. There's the trail that has the tiger in Asia. I don't want to get this pronunciation wrong. The Maharaja Jungle Trek. And then there's the Gorilla Falls Trail, which is also really fun. We like to take our time going through there and talking to cast members about, questions that the kids have about the animals and whatnot. So yeah, great learning opportunities through the trails for sure.
That sounds terrific. Yeah, we really like Animal Kingdom, but our kids are asking about princesses and Magic Kingdom. So hit us with your Magic Kingdom suggestions.
Yeah, the big kahuna.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots there. So Magic Kingdom, it is, I find there's so much history that you can talk about there. There's a lot there. So and there's a lot of literature that you can bring into this park. Just with a lot of the attractions, like I think about Peter Pan.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that you could do with that. And even Fantasyland. So when speaking about princesses, I was thinking about this. And again, when my learners are a little bit older, it would be great to dive into the background and origin of fairy tales and folklore and talk about some of the darker undertones to those. And even looking at different fairy tales cross-culturally. So you can talk about Cinderella, for example, like the classic rags to riches. There's several different versions of that you can tie together and study before you go. And then you could also study specifically Disney's adaptation of it. And of course, there's many movie adaptations of it as well. So, and that's what I was finding with Peter Pan. We just watched one version of Peter Pan recently, and my kids absolutely loved it. And I was like, oh, okay, we should probably read the book now then. And there are so many different versions of that story, movie adaptations that we could talk about and compare and see the different interpretations of it. Like you could do that with so many of the attractions at Disney. So, or any of the fairy tales anyway. But, so that's a whole like aspect that someday I really want to dive into. And we're kind of starting to do that, a little bit. Not necessarily Disney wise, but we just reread Charlie and the Chocolate Factory not too long ago. And there's, the two versions of the movie. So we've watched one and now we have to watch the other, and then we're going to compare them and talk about how they made it differently in comparison to the book. So we're already starting to do some of those like cross comparisons and talking about those kinds of things. So that you can definitely do with Fantasyland and all the different fairy tales that you can find there. And then we've got there's Pirates of the Caribbean, which you could talk about history of pirates and all that stuff. And again, if it's something that your kid is really interested in, you could prep them beforehand by anything else that you're bringing into it, or in any curriculum that you're using that is talking about like history of pirates and whatnot. So that's fun too. Then we've got Big Thunder Mountain, which is a great topic about coal mining. And I've read that in the lineup, there are some allusions to some of the darker history of coal mines. And so if your learners are ready, you could kind of try to find those in the line and talk about what that means. And, and dive deeper as you're there into, that history, which I didn't really pick up on that, but it's something that, my son is playing Minecraft a lot now. Like he's really into Minecraft, and he loves, rocks and all that kind of thing. So we could definitely get into mining history for sure. Anytime now, but and then there's Tom Sawyer Island is a favorite of my kids. We just kind of let them go over there. There's a fort there, and they just explore, and they have just such a great time. And of course, you can prep them ahead of time by learning about Tom Sawyer and, reading books ahead of time. So, yeah, that's a good way. Oh, there's the Hall of Presidents in Liberty Square, which is really great. And again, it's like the history, and they've really done it well. So you can see all the different presidents, which is great. Then we're going to move over to Tomorrowland, the Carousel of Progress.
Also known as
That
free air
one.
conditioning.
Free air conditioning.
Yes, and nap time. Nap time. Yeah, it's a good place to just like take a minute, for sure. But it's also really cool. I find it really cool. Some people find it boring, but I think it's really neat. And it's really cool to see the look on the kids' faces when they're like, they didn't have like a refrigerator back then. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, man, they did not. They did not.
Yeah,
So
it is
it's
a nice
really
look at
cool.
like the average person's life, what it was like in different time periods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how that's progressed in the home. Like I think it's really cool. So but yeah, it can be more of a boring one, but it's definitely a great history lesson to look at. So yeah. And then I already mentioned the steam train, but the steam train that goes around the park, it is a great way to get a look at all the attractions and just kind of like take a tour around the park. But then also the steam train has its own history, a history in its own right. So
That's fantastic. My brain has so many ideas about getting our kids prepped and maybe studying some things ahead of time and watching the Disney documentaries. This was really helpful. So I think this is a little bit of a long, but I think really good. And it gave me a lot of ideas. So for those who haven't traveled to Disney before, what's something that you wouldn't live without? Like, what's your best advice of, we all should remember if we're going to go on a trip, especially with littles, you know better than anyone with four young ones. What would your best advice be?
My best advice would just to be to slow down when you're there. I find that a lot of our most magical moments have happened in the slower times when we're just sitting around and we're just all together taking in the atmosphere. So, yeah, I would say make a plan, have a plan in place, do some research, but don't stress if your plan A doesn't work out. Have a plan B, and then just slow down and enjoy it. Don't push your kids. If they need a break, take a break. Just enjoy them and be playful, because learning happens when you're playing and having fun. So make sure you're playing and enjoying your kids, and learning will happen.
I agree.
I think that's great advice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Disney. We're really excited about our trip coming up. We know we're watching a lot of YouTube videos, and we're going to be there a little longer, I think, than you were there. And we're looking at maybe doing, the Lego and
Yes.
getting to the the Orlando Aquarium and potentially the like Crayola Land, and there's all these like various lands.
Cool.
It's like
water parks
family
and whatnot,
family wonderland. So I think this is really good because a lot of families think about going to Disney and they think about rides and things. And I have to honestly say, until I saw your post, I didn't actually think about prepping the kids in any educational aspect for Disney. And now I'm thinking about all the things like about animals, or prepping them about steam trains, or something that
a nice park journal. I can already see it.
Yeah, maybe they could get really excited. Like, they wouldn't be excited about the steam train necessarily. Otherwise, I mean, trains are always cool. But if we prep them and we learn a bit about it and we watch some videos about it, and I'm sure there's some video where you meet the conductor and they talk about how the train works, then that would really kind of make a bigger impression, all these other aspects, than beyond just fast rides and princesses. So
yeah. Oh, for sure. There's so much. And just enjoying the atmosphere is just great. And it's really nice to have that connective time together there, and then look for those educational opportunities.
That, I think, is our doorbell. Our little...
that is our 4-year-old timer. So thank you so much, Bailey. We really appreciate it.
Somehow she's got blueberries all over her face.
Yeah.
We'll
investigate that later.
I'm worried about our furniture. So great. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the time, and this was really great. And you gave us a lot of food for thought, and hopefully people listening will also have a lot of motivation and excitement about going to Disney. I know it's exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!